Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Terry Maxwell and I will be your host. This is Business Virtual, a crash course for entrepreneurs. I'm delighted to welcome our my esteemed colleague and friend, Elizabeth Ice, and she is truly an entrepreneur in the tech space. She's an unbelievably amazing entrepreneur and has cracked the code on a lot of things that are virtual, and who knew that we were going to need all of that right now. But Elizabeth, are you ready to get started? I sure am.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the warm welcome, Terry. And, I'm privileged to be on the session with you because you've been thinking ahead about the new world of work you were way ahead of your time. So it's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you.
Yeah. And then it was really fun to write that book back in 2012 and 2013 because I saw the trend then. And then when I met you, I was like, oh my God, this is like divine intervention, So you've got a really interesting take on how to really pivot your business and into this virtual space. The funny thing is, I feel like one of those people that found, I had previously found like this special space and not many people knew about it. And now everybody knows about it and they're all rushing to it. And I'm like, wait, So I'm excited to have you give some tips to entrepreneurs who are trying to make this transition.
Well, it's funny, but we were both starting to think about this thing at the same time, because that's about the time that I was thinking up and figuring out the first version of results resourcing. And really the reason I got involved in business virtual, way ahead of the need for it today that there is that, I just felt that there was so much more that solopreneurs and small businesses could do if they could tap into the amazing talent that's available virtually. And so my purpose has always been to empower the purpose of other businesses. So we are a virtual company, and we've learned so much from working with our clients and the freelancers that we match them with, that I really felt it was timely to share what we've learned. And so more and more people could realize that working virtually successfully is within their reach, and small pivots can make it possible for your business. So we're really excited to share what we've learned.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go over the agenda and talk about what we're going to cover. And while you're pulling that up, for those of you, I can see a couple more people have joined. Welcome. And we're going to cover some pretty important topics right now. And I'd like to say that in many ways, I think the virus is the cure, because it's forcing us to do things as a society that we didn't want to do that are actually really good for us. And one of them, as an entrepreneur, is virtual work. It's better for your employees. It's better for the environment. We can go on and on. But Elizabeth is going to share with you a pretty interesting perspective about what that means. And then we're also going to talk about virtual work strategies. How do you run a business virtually? I've been doing it now for about 8 years, and I have one of my businesses is a strategic alliance with WeWork, and I found that to be just a better model. So we'll talk about some strategies there. Then we'll talk about virtual outsourcing. Outsourcing and really leveraging fractional talent is going to be critical as you pivot your business and you move into whatever this uncertain world is. We'll talk about core versus non-core work. And then one of my favorite topics is we'll talk about scaling. So Elizabeth, let's jump in with virtual work and virtual workers.
Sounds good. And I do need to warn a few people on the call here that I am calling in from the epicenter in New York City. So, every now and then you might hear a siren going by, and unfortunately, that's par for the course in New York anyway, but unfortunately, it's happening more and more frequently these days. But the way I wanted to start this talk is really about what's new. And frankly, it's the coronavirus. It's the thing that's taking people to work from home and changing the face of businesses. That's really what's new. But there's a lot that's not new. And I wanted to start here because I think it's a way for people to get grounded, in what remote or virtual work is. And these are just all the examples of virtual work, remote work that you all do every day today. Some of them are more prevalent, if you've worked for a large corporation, but in many cases, these are all tools that you employ today to work with colleagues and professionals to help advance your business. And so I think it's a good grounding that in some respects, this isn't new, but really virtual work and virtual workers as a concept and having this apply in your business more fully is kind of a new idea. And to me, a virtual business is an agile business because it gives you the flexibility to scale up and scale down, to add talent as you need it, or to outsource work you don't want to do. And all those things ultimately net you expertise gains and expense savings. And all of those things can raise your revenue and lower your costs, which is a good thing. And then a little bit of I guess grim humor, social distancing. It certainly allows you to achieve that. And so I thought I'd start by talking about the fact that we kind of have three groups of virtual workers, and this has been around for a long time. And clearly there are employees, and they work on site and they also work elsewhere. And more these days, employees work elsewhere, or hopefully in the future, some combination of the two, because there are advantages for people to get together and collaborate. But there's just, today's environment is forcing us to work with new tools like Zoom or like we are today to collaborate in different ways. Vendors, they work elsewhere and they're on contract. And common examples are our CPAs or attorneys. So unless you're a really large corporation, you don't have those on staff. But those are vendors, virtual workers that you work with every day to, advance your business. What's really new is the focus on virtual contractors. And those are people that do work elsewhere. They are on contract, and more they are on demand. So they can be hired for when you need them, for as long as you need them, as opposed to really pursuing full-time employment with all kinds of work you may need. And so I want to talk about the success factors that really that you need to consider if you're going to virtualize your business beyond the virtualization that you already have, say with a CPA or with your attorney. And first is clear leadership practices. And I start there because there needs to be a strategy and a leadership commitment to introducing virtual virtual work processes for it to be successful, especially if you have staff. If the leader doesn't do it, the staff's not going to do it. And so I think that even if you're a solopreneur, establishing a strategic leadership position about how you're going to integrate virtual work will increase your success factor. The second is having clear process and tools. And really, whether you're a solopreneur, a small business, or a large corporation, all these things are true. You need to have clear processes and tools, whether you're delegating work to the department next door or to a virtual worker or to someone that's working from home. Process and tools are really what make it possible to get the work product that you're looking for and for communications and work processes and teamwork to work smoothly. The third is clear work definitions, and that's making sure people know what are the steps they need to take. Again, process and tools. What's the process? What tools do they use? And clear definition really includes definitions of success. What is the outcome that you're looking for? Very often people tend to get comfortable with, oh, the steps of the work are defined without really clearly defining what the outcome is. And if you define the outcome first, the end zone, where you want to score, and work backward, you're probably going to change your process a little bit, your work definitions a little bit, and probably get a better result because you're more focused on the end result as opposed to the steps along the way. But the steps are important too. And then lastly, establishing clear teamwork practices. And if you today everyone's working from home, but you really need to create a team environment that includes both staff and outsourced workers, people that work in an office versus work from home, and really integrating those teams so they work well together is really crucial. And what you'll see down at the bottom of the slide is just the reminder that the more virtual your business is, or the more virtual elements that you've incorporated into your business, the more agile your business is going to be. So I wanted to take a minute and talk about each one of these success factors a little bit more in detail. So a virtual strategy is developing and committing to that strategy. And this really leads the foundation for how your organization is going to move forward. And it's developing those process, procedures, and tools. And whether it's you or a manager or a supervisor, that's really crucial, because that's lays the foundation for how you want work done, and how outputs to your clients need to be delivered. And this is key. If you've done process, procedures, and tools, it's going to be easier for you to manage the results, not the tasks. And that avoids what everybody hates, which is micromanagement. So it's really good to be focused on what is the end result that you want to achieve, and have the tools to make that possible. Fostering team communications, and all of this allows you to either delegate work to other employees or to outsource work to vendors and contract workers. And lastly, but not least, is really leading by example. If you take the approach that I believe in technology, but I don't use it, then there's going to be other people in your organizations that are going to do the same thing. So if you really take the lead, no matter how uncomfortable it might be as we're in these times of pivoting, that's going to set an example for the rest of the people you work with. And I think that will get you further ahead.
Let's go back to that for just a second, Elizabeth, because I think there's a couple of gems in here that I want to make sure we crystallize. One is committing to a virtualization strategy just simply means that this is not like a short term, we're just doing this because we have to. It's really just saying, no, we're doing this because we want to. And that was the best decision that I made in 2011 is I scaled my office way back, and then I scaled it back again and scaled it back again. My office kept shrinking as my team grew because I was more committed to having a virtual work model. And the benefit of that is I got better talent because they liked the flexibility. In terms of the operations, there's two little hidden things in here that I really want to crystallize. One is managing results, not tasks or even people. The beautiful thing about virtualizing your business is if you set clear results, you don't have to manage the people and you don't have to manage the task. You can just basically just make sure you're achieving the results. And the other thing that's hidden in here is on the team communication side. It's just little things that you can do. In the military, they call it battle rhythm. And what a battle rhythm is just getting people into the flow. And so we have a flow in our portfolio that everybody has a slow start on Monday to give them time to ease into the week. And we try to shut down all of our meetings by early afternoon on Friday. And then we have set meetings throughout the week, and you build the rest of your schedule around that. So I just wanted to just give that perspective. These little things that you're talking about are not difficult to do. They just require a bit of a mind shift. Those were super points. I'm glad that you added them in, because they illustrate things that I was kind of talking about, generally. So let's move on to the next one, which is really the process and tools. And I start there because process and tools is the starting point once you've made the leadership commitment to doing more or bringing in more virtual elements and workers to your work. So successful work and workers really depend on having well-defined processes. And that means defining your outcomes, because if you expect a certain outcome, sometimes the process ends up changing because you realize there's a disconnect between the steps and the outcome. So the two reinforce one another. And then really, if you don't have processes, it's going to be hard for you to pick the right tools. So if you haven't thought about populating a CRM system, then you're not going to know the data that's important to you, and it might affect your choice of a CRM system, which would be a common tool. And there are so many tools that support process in virtual work these days that, frankly, sometimes tools remove the need to hire a person, because all of a sudden there's a CRM that's gathering data and organizing data rather than a person that did it before. And I think this is a really important point, whether you're a corporate person or a small business or an individual, because corporate tools used to be something that you really had only if you worked for a corporation. But in the world of technology today and software as a service, there's so many tools that you don't have to build them, you just lease them
rent them month to month or on an annual basis, like CRM tools or collaboration tools. Zoom, for example, those are all tools that make it easily available to any business of any size to expand outreach and work with to execute its processes anywhere in the world. So it's really an amazing time that we live in that facilitates this kind of work. And it really allows you to manage the work because you have so much visibility in terms of what work is being done if you set up the processes in your tools correctly. So again, having good process and tools, regardless of the size of your business, really gives you greater business agility.
And the one thing I'd add on the process side, I can be a bit of a process freak. And ironically, what I found in virtual work is over-engineering processes is less effective. What's more effective are things like checklists, where people know what the steps are, but the flow of how they execute those steps, you leave a little bit to the situation and the customer. So when she says process steps, I always like to call that out because I know you agree with me on this, is you don't need to over-engineer it just because it's virtual. In fact, if you can just lay the steps out and leave the team members to executing the steps, you'll actually get a better outcome.
Absolutely. Sometimes you need to, within a framework, call an audible based on something that happened in the local market, or a client did something you didn't expect. I mean, one of the things I do for a living is build technology, and no matter how well I think I have thought about how a client is going to use one of my systems, inevitably I am humbled that somebody thinks of another way to do something that I never programmed for. So it's good to be able to let there be some flexibility. And again, if you've defined your successful outcomes, people are going to make the right decisions because they're going to be thinking about the context for decision making that way. The next part is work definition, and that follows, process and steps, because this is when you're really setting roles and responsibilities for people. And what's always said, in management training is never build a job around a person. Build it around the process and the outcome that you want, because the person might leave, or the person might get sick, or whatever it might be. So it's really important to think about work definition as work that needs to be completed, not that a person who's doing it. But the roles and responsibilities do need to be assigned to a person or more than one person. And really it grows out of process and tools. And so to me, well-defined work, really has these 5 components: setting clear expectations so people know what is expected of them. And that essentially is an outcome, for a person as well as a process. And then work practices. You can't, as Terry said, you can't over-engineer, and sometimes you just have to set out practices and let people apply those practices as they're doing their work. Clearly, you need to have tasks or steps if certain things are really important, or using a certain kind of system, or backing up something, or to preserve security of data. So having tasks and steps can be really important to making sure the work gets done the way you want it. But ultimately, it boils down to establishing clear measures of success, which go back to expectations. The two really go hand in hand. And then, to me, performance management happens almost every day. I mean, I grew up in a large corporate environment, and there were annual performance reviews. And both as a worker and as a manager, it's like it was hard to remember, once a year, everything that had happened, good, bad, or indifferent. And so to me, performance management is really something that ought to happen all the time, and a lot of praise as well as constructive criticism. And it can happen on every email, whatever the communication breaks are. But really, performance management ought to be happening regularly and often. And all of these 5 components are really going to be the components that allow you to effectively delegate to staff that you may have, and outsource, which might be to vendors or independent contractors. It's these 5 things are essential to being successful, in making your business more virtual. The last part is really optimizing performance. And this, to me, is really back to leadership. And it's about commitments that your team members need to make. And this, in a sense, goes back to setting expectations. It's the roles and responsibilities, processes, the tools. It might be around how they document what work is done. It might be around how often do they communicate, the team meetings, and really how do you use shared data in shared systems. Those are all things that, you know, regardless of the individual tasks and roles and responsibilities, people need to make a commitment to the bigger picture, that to have a successful business, to optimize the performance of your business and your team, people have to agree to follow roles and responsibilities and all the things that I have outlined there. And really the same goes for the team leader. The last point is lead by example again. You know, you really need to carry the flag and make sure that people see you walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And I think it comes down to truly letting go of micromanaging tasks and managing results, which isn't always easy, but that's an exercise that needs to be pursued every single day to get comfortable with that. And that will really also include not only assessing your own as the leader, but also assessing your staff, and that your management staff realizes that not only are they going to be measured on their ability to get results, but also to effectively manage on-site as well as remote teams. Because at the end of the day, you know, your business leaders are going to help you build a sustainable virtual business, which will make your business more agile. And those are long-term strategic goals that, you know, all of your team members and your team leaders need to help you get there to really develop a sustainable virtual business.
Yeah, and I've got another little tip there. I know a lot of time when I first was writing the book, The New World of Work, and I was interviewing some of my clients at the time, people thought I was really crazy to advocate this for entrepreneurs because they felt like if I can't see the person, I can't see the work. And the irony is it's actually the reverse, because the person's physical presence isn't the work. And a lot of times they're just shuffling paper around on the desk, but then it looks like they're working and they're on calls and in meetings, but they're not actually moving the ball down the field. When you actually do set up, you know, whether it's Box or Google Drive or Dropbox, I can go in anytime, day or night, and audit our customer files and know whether or not my team is doing the work and getting the results. So the irony about shifting to virtual when you have teams or contractors that you're working with is it's actually easier to audit what's occurring, and it's easier to measure the effectiveness and the results that people are getting.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some job platforms that have tools like taking a snapshot, you know, every amount of time to see what somebody's looking at on their screen. And I always was discouraged by those kind of tools because it's not focused on achieving the result. It's not focused on establishing trust. I think it's really important to, if you think about these 4 things that we've been talking about, that builds the right relationship and trust and establishes responsibility of everybody that's on the team to get you to the end zone. And I think those are really the really sustainable practices that will build not only a virtual, but an agile business. So Terry, talk a little bit about scaling operations, since that's your favorite thing.
Yeah, it is. So, you know, whether your business is a solopreneur and you're trying to get it to the next level so that you can earn more profit, or you have freelancers on your team, or you have employees, the key to growing the financial viability of your business is the key to that, particularly on the other side of this virus, is scaling operations. And what that means is you're going to be on a treadmill of get the work, do the work, get the work, do the work, and you're never going to get off of that treadmill unless you can really shift your focus and really manage these priorities. The first, of course, is the wonderful phrase, work on the business, not in the business. And my measure of success each year is not my revenue. My measure of success is how much time am I spending working on the business versus in the business. And for example, in the last 3 months, because we've got some really, really solid leaders, I'm spending less time working in the business. And so I know my business is more successful. The other one, of course, is doing more work that you enjoy, not what needs to be done. And that's something I advocate for every single team member in our entire portfolio is how can we begin to modify your role so you're doing more work that you enjoy. And then lastly is growing the business without wearing yourself out. And that's a fine balance in times like this because we're scrambling and, you know, we lost a couple of clients and then other clients said they were moving forward and not. And so you can get really worked up about that, but you've got to just focus on the activities you need to do, not the result. If you just pound away at the activities and you keep your mindset in the right place and you do the activities to grow the business will grow. And I know you're a Peter Drucker fan, so you agree with a lot of these things. So what would you say about scaling operations?
Well, I totally agree. And next couple of slides are really going to help me crystallize my thoughts on that. But, you know, just in general, as a motto, I do think Peter Drucker was an amazing business mind. And literally some 60 years ago, he said, do what you do best and outsource the rest. And I just think that's a profound statement because it helps you accomplish or balance the competing priorities that you talk about. You know, what you do best is probably working on your business, not in it. And it's what you enjoy, not what has to be done. And it's going to allow you to grow your business without wearing yourself out. So I think really this is an important thing to think about. The question is how? How do you decide what you do best and what should you outsource? And that's really what I want to talk about next. So to me, it's all about having a virtual talent strategy. And that, in a sense, is what we all do, but we haven't really thought about it. So if you think about you as a solopreneur or a small business, or even as a leader in a department in a big business, you're kind of in the center, you know, of your ecosystem, and you're surrounding yourself with experts, whether it's your admin in a large corporation, you know, or it's a small business that has an admin, an attorney, a CPA, and a director of operations or head of sales or whatever, or a solopreneur trying to do it all. You know, you really need to think about you being the center, what is you love to do, what's going to move the needle for your business, and then surrounding yourself with the talent that you need to accomplish those goals. And that is what I call a talent ecosystem, which could include core employees and flexible freelancers that you outsource to. And to me, it's more and more less about I acquired the talent to help me achieve my business goals to I'm accessing the talent in different ways. And talent actually can be employees, freelance, vendors, and it can be processing tools. Those are all ways that you can build a talent strategy because skills get brought into the system through systems and tools as well. And the end result is business agility. So I think this is just a great picture to have in your mind, no matter what kind of business you are, solopreneur to, you know, a larger corporation. I think this is really relevant, you know, to all sizes of businesses. And so I want to talk a little bit about hiring freelancers, because that's kind of one of the newer ideas, you know, in terms of a flexible workforce. And I am a big fan of hiring freelancers. I worked for a number of startups and small ventures, you know, in the last 20 years. And increasingly, those firms were finding freelancers to be an amazing source of talent because they're available, highly available, they're flexible, and they have amazing skills. And you can bring them in to add value right away. So I've kind of listed off the left, you know, kind of the main reasons they can be so valuable. I mean, clearly today, the fact that everyone's virtual, that makes a big important element. But I think one of the keys is going back to the previous slide about identifying what's core, you know, what you love, what's essential to work on the business, is thinking about what work is core that will really move the needle and what work is non-core, work that other people could do for you, whether it's a virtual administrator, you know, or if you're in a retail business, perhaps social media, or graphic design or copywriting. Those are not core to your business. They're essential, they're necessary, but they're not necessarily things you do well or is core to your business. And it's thinking about how some of that non-core work could be outsourced to high caliber freelance people that you really can scale up and down because you hire them as you need them. You don't have to have them on the payroll and worry about filling their time because you're really just using them when you need to use them. And plenty of freelancers, frankly, are small businesses themselves. And so they are increasingly LLCs, small corporations, and their business is doing what they love. And they probably want to do, well, plenty of freelancers want to do what you don't want to do. And so it's a great melding of both sides get to really do what you love and outsource the rest. And it's all, to me, about, trying to build value in a nimble way. And, no business has an endless supply of capital. And so I think, to me, it's another way to optimize your capital use because you have a finite amount of capital, and how do you really focus the bulk of it on the core things that are going to move your business forward, but still use the budget you have to find the talent that you need that can really build value, build differentiation, allow you to pivot new ideas. I mean, to me, it's a great combination to allow your business to blossom. So let's talk a little bit about the cost benefit of using staff, employees versus freelancers. And caution a little bit about this slide. The left hand is a study that was done by 10X Management, which is a technology talent firm. And it's a great illustration of a savings, the different costs that you have to worry about if you're going to hire a full-time employee. And I've really left the example intact because I didn't want to tinker with it. But you would never hire a freelancer for a full-time employee work. I mean, yes, if you look at this, it's $150 an hour freelancer compared to a full-time employee for the same base salary, you would save 6% in that particular case. But that's really not the right thing to do, because if it's a core employee performing core work, it really should be an employee. It should not be a freelancer. But I think on the right-hand side, which is the part I added, is really a very realistic example of how a freelancer can be very cost beneficial to your company, because you don't need the freelancer full-time. You probably need, this example is 20 hours a week, half the amount of time, less than half the amount of time, frankly. And if you still paid the same rate, which is a high freelance rate, but I wanted to keep the example consistent, your cost would be $150,000 versus $300,000. So it's a 50% savings by hiring somebody freelance to outsource that non-core work that you don't have to, you only use that for the 20 hours that you need. You don't need to pay for 40 and then try to figure out how to fill it. You just use the freelance resource for those 20 hours. And that could be a $30 an hour high-grade virtual assistant, to a high-level technology practitioner. It really ranges, but you can get great freelance talent to do just about anything that you need to have done. So let me talk a little bit about having a scaling strategy. We talked about the 4 components to virtualizing your business, and it echoes back to that, because really, supply, your ability to deliver value to your clients, is all about your operations. And it's planning to scale really has 3 components: process, tools, and people. So we've already been talking about that this whole session. You've got to have process, knowing how you want work to get done. You need process to pick the tools that are going to be right for your business. And once you've had process and tools, then you're in the position to pick people and assign work to people or outsource work to people. And I think this is really a crucial caveat here. Is the upside of technology is you can do so much at your fingertips, on your phone, whatever, but it's also tempting to do a lot for yourself when really it's not what you love to do. You might not be best at it, and it's not core to your business. And so it's important to constantly be thinking back, should I be doing this work, even if you technically could do it to some point? So to me, the caveat is to always put a dollar value on your time. And one of the things when we work with clients, we really help them put a dollar value in their time. What is an hour of your time work? And then think through if you're going to outsource to a freelancer or build that graphic design yourself, whatever it might be, how many hours is it going to take you once you've decided, you would pay yourself X amount per hour? And quantifying that's really important to level set, because if it's going to be $2,000, of your time to go do something that somebody else could do for you, that's probably a perfect opportunity to find somebody within your organization or outsourcing it to a really capable freelancer to have that person do that work for you, because it's going to be basically a better use of your time and your money. So let's really wrap up and think about what the key insights of today's sessions were all about. Business is already virtual. So the question is how virtual are you? And have you really thought about your process, your tools, your people, your leadership strategy, your long-term strategy of helping your clients be more virtual? Those are really some of the things to think about and take small steps to move in that direction, because we're going to be more virtual for the foreseeable future, even once the coronavirus, is over. These changes are not going to suddenly disappear. So it's thinking about how do you really make them work for your business. And this will really drive your business agility. You'll have to make fewer hard cost decisions and have more variable cost opportunities. And as I mentioned, the success factors are in things that are going to help your business no matter what environment we're in: leadership, process and tools, work definition, and teamwork. And really thinking about talent ecosystems and accessing the talent that you need, which might be a combination of employees and virtual workers or vendors. And this really allows you to scale up and scale down, optimize the cash that you have to run your business, and really putting together a team of people that can help you deliver value to your clients. And I heartily endorse that virtual freelancers, many of whom are results-oriented business owners, they don't have an employment mentality, can really help you move your business forward in a very flexible way.
And I would just say, go do it, because when you really move your business to virtual as a strategy, and you really focus on managing results and not people, the freedom that you get is unlike anything that I've ever experienced. And that's a really good segue, Elizabeth, to the Q&A. We had a really great question come in, and I get asked this question a lot. I'm sure you do too. How do you determine what's core and what's non-core in terms of the work?
Okay, I think it goes back to that slide when we talked about the conflicting priorities, because I think, if you think about the things that your clients really value, that you deliver to your clients, those are probably things that are core to your business. And things that are behind the scenes that your clients don't see, those are probably non-core activities. And one of the things I encourage people to do, and it's like building a task list, is how do you spend your time on a day, a week, and just making that list. And then once without judgment, you make that long list, because it's probably going to be a long list, then go back and circle the things that your clients value, that really help you move your needle. Those are probably core things. And then once you've done that, the next cut is to kind of go back to what Terry said. What are the things that you enjoy versus the things you don't enjoy? Because there might be some things that are core to your business that you don't really enjoy. And so maybe that's something to be delegated, or even outsourced. And then, things that just wear you out, maybe you need to think about a new way to do it, whether it's outsourcing or getting a tool or a business partner. So I think there's some really simple ways to start thinking about what's core to your business and what's not core, without worrying about what you're going to do about it. Just start with making the list. And then once you've got the list, you're going to start thinking about, okay, well, who could do these things for me? How could I get this work done? Because the client doesn't value it, but it still needs to happen. And that might be, handling invoices, for example, that you need a bookkeeper for. Could be as, that kind of basic thing. So that would be my suggestion is to start simple like that. And that you'll very easily, come up with a list of things that maybe you shouldn't be doing anymore. The opportunity cost is too high if you've put a dollar value on your time.
Yeah, and putting a dollar value on your time is one of the most important things that you can do as an entrepreneur, because it makes you really rethink how you're spending your time.
Yeah.
Another question that came in that I really I'd like your opinion on is, how do you measure results in your business? Like, if you're not really used to doing that beyond the dollars and cents results, how do you actually put a system in place to measure results?
Well, that's a great question. And I think it's probably going to differ by business. But, I would say that, once you've kind of figured out the core things that drive your business, maybe in the beginning it's subjective, but, there's, I think there needs to be you set some time frames for stepping back and assessing whether you feel like the work that's been done has gotten you anywhere, that's built any value, or your clients are seeing any value. And I think that some measures also have to include sampling how your clients feel about what you're doing, whether they're renewing with you, or whether they're not, that if you have churn. So I think that thinking about assessing your business on a regular basis and just putting some stakes in the ground about, well, if I was going to measure my progress on delivering value, on setting goals, here's the things I'm going to measure. And I guess I'm a big believer in nearly constant iteration. I'm always testing things. I'm trying things out. If they work, great, I keep them. If they don't work, then I drop them and I try something else. But at the end of the day, you probably want to measure things like, revenue, profitability, relationships, whether you're building, a nimble team that's going to be sustainable. Those are just some key things off the top of my head that are probably universal to all businesses. And you could start with very subjective measures. And over time, the more you work with it, the more you're going to say, oh, this is measurable. Oh, this is measurable. And frankly, you can also hire people to help you build those systems if you're not good at it yourself. There's plenty of people that, again, back to the freelancers, that are really good at business process design, goal development, and they're not going to do it for you, but what people will do is they will basically interview, get ideas out of your head on a piece of paper, and to give you something to work with, because not everybody is process and expectation setting experts, but there are people that can help you do it.
Yeah, and I would add to that, if you're a solopreneur, the philosophy that I adopt along the lines of what Elizabeth said is really just about what I call impact measures. What are the activities that I'm going to do that are going to make an impact? And they're in two categories: demand, i.e. getting new customers, and then supply is delivering what I sold. So I try to come up with a couple of metrics for both of those, and I focus on doing those activities and measuring the impact, not whether or not I got a quote unquote result. But like on demand generation, it's how many connections did I make today? And I set a goal to make 3 new connections every single day. And almost every day I hit 3 or more. And so that's an impact measure. On the supply side, it might be something else. So start there. And then if you have people that you're managing, whether they're contract freelance workers or they're employees, think in terms of the same concept. How can you measure impact versus activity? What you don't want is a lot of people just in motion. You really want people making moves, like moves down the field. What does first base look like? Second base, third base, fourth base. And if you just come up with something like that and measure the impact that people are having, it takes the pressure, and you don't need to manage the people or the tasks.
Yeah, I would really agree with that. There's been a lot of talk about this, not recent, but leading versus lagging indicators. And a lagging indicator is revenue. I mean, by the time you see your revenue numbers, you've covered a lot of waterfront. And so the leading indicators are the like Terry just said, the number of new connections that you made, the number of, business collaboration sessions you went to where you really feel you took away a potential relationship. Those are all small steps along the way that are going to lead to revenue growth. But you can measure day to day whether you've made an advancement on a leading indicator rather than, and then at the end of the day, you look back and at the lagging indicator and see whether it's worked or not, and you adjust. But it's looking at the impact measures that really help you adjust day to day.
We've got time for one more question. Can you talk about scaling from a solopreneur virtual business to a small team virtual business and really delegating virtual tasks to humans versus third-party services?
Is it clear what a third-party service is?
Well, it would be either like a system, MailChimp, Zapier, that type of thing.
Got it. Okay, more technology oriented. So as a solopreneur, I think it goes back to the talent ecosystem slide that I showed, where you put yourself in the middle. I think the first thing is being clear about the value that you're trying to deliver, and then starting, to draw little circles. What are the things that you, as the solopreneur, love to do that light you up, that is that special sauce that your clients come to you for, and then what are all the things that need to happen to help you deliver that, especially the things maybe you don't like to do as much as other things. And I think that's the starting point for other sources of people, talent that you need. As a solopreneur, I would really encourage the employment of freelancers, because freelancers are going to let you try things out and scale up or down depending on the amount of need that you have, for a particular component in the value chain that you deliver. And so it's really putting a team together, and that team could be through business partnerships, other solopreneurs or other small business partners that do complementary services, and you can exchange business and work together and really appear bigger to the clients you're serving, that you have more talent at your disposal because you've got an established business partnership, with other vendors that fill in the holes that aren't the things that are primary drivers for you. And another option is really to hire freelancers, and you can hire freelancers in a number of different ways, but there's pros and cons to hiring freelancers these days. There's plenty of job boards out there where you can search for freelancers yourself. The key thing is being conscious of whether you're good at it or not, finding and vetting talent. And again, that value your time. Is that something you should be doing? That's and I would also caution you against, while you might trust your neighbor, and you might trust your friend or your colleague, and they say, oh, I know the perfect graphic designer for you, for example. Do they really know your business? Do they really know what drives value for your clients? It may seem like a gift, but if, I just hear so many stories about hiring an intern or hiring a neighbor and it just not working out. And again, valuing your time. Do you really want to invest in taking a chance on somebody, your neighbor, who doesn't really know your business, has recommended? And that's one of the reasons results resourcing came about, because we really believe that it's a combination of talent curation that recruiters, we happen to recruit specifically for freelancers, combined with technology platforms, can make it streamlined to be a trusted source of for talent, for solopreneurs, because it's not always easy building those talent ecosystems. But I'm amazed at solopreneurs and how many people they know in their networks, and it's just a matter of systematically putting them together and perhaps using a service like ours, to fill in blanks that you're struggling to fill in.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for you sharing the wisdom. And I think if you can go to the last slide, I want to make sure that folks connect with us on LinkedIn. You're a wonderful connector and one of my all-time favorites, and I'm a huge fan of results resourcing. So I believe you've got an offer for folks to help them make this transition. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think today's session was really to give everybody a structure for thinking about it. And there's a lot of work that you can do on your own following the different thoughts we've conveyed, both from our own experiences, Terry's and mine, as well as the work we've done with so many clients today. But I'm also happy to sit down with you, not in person, on a Zoom call or the phone for 30 minutes just to kind of brainstorm. Yeah, and so I'm happy to do a free business virtual strategy session to talk about how you might apply, you know, the principles we talked about today to develop a strategy, and then how do you actually get started putting that talent ecosystem together so you can leverage virtual freelance talent to scale your business. And all you need to do is email me, and I'd be happy to set that up with you.
And I would encourage everybody to take advantage of that. You'll find Elizabeth to be an incredible resource and just with a heart of service. So Elizabeth, again, thank you so much for offering your wisdom and your expertise. And to all of you that joined us, we're really glad that you're part of our community. And again, please do connect with us. And I just want to end with just a brief little story. It was a lesson from my grandfather that I believe is very important in these times. And my grandfather taught me at a very critical time in my life. I was playing basketball and was really good at basketball. In this particular playoff game, the first half, we were just killing it and I just couldn't miss. I mean, it was just one of those periods in my life that everything I shot, I scored. And for some reason in the second half, I didn't anticipate that the opposing team would be making significant adjustments to slow me down. And I ended up losing the ball and dribbling out of bounds and fouling, and it just did everything just fell apart literally in the first few minutes of the game. And my coach pulled me out of the game because I was literally having a meltdown on the court. And then we lost the game. And of course it was the coach's fault because it couldn't have been my fault. And then I stewed about it all night. And the next day I went to my grandfather, who was, you know, where I always sought solace from. And he listened to me rant for about 5 minutes. And then he started grinning and touching his goatee. And finally he said, "You get what you focus on." And I put my hands on my hip like any good teenager and said, "What do you mean? It wasn't my fault." And he grinned again and said, "Terry, you get what you focus on." And I was like, you know, "What do you mean?" I was so mad. "What do you mean? It's not my fault." And he said, "Well, what were you focused on the first half when you were winning?" And I said, "Scoring." And then he said, "In the second half, what were you focused on?" And all of a sudden, I thought about it. I thought the second half, I was focused on the obstacle. Every time I would see those defenders come up to the half court line to meet me at half court, they weren't even doing a full court press. They were meeting me at half court and boxing me in at the half court line. Every time I saw them approaching me, that's all I could focus on was the defenders. And I was focused on the obstacle. I wasn't focused on the goal. And so my grandfather kind of, you know, smacked me upside the head a little bit. And he said, "Terry, you get what you focus on. And anytime things are not going the way that you want, you've got to focus only on where you're going, not the obstacle that's in your way." And sure enough, he was right, you know, and I have applied that at every critical juncture of my life. I take my focus off what is not working and I shift my focus to what is working. I shift my focus to where I'm going. Every day I start with a little simple thing. Who am I called to serve and what do they need from me right now? I don't think about my bank balance. I don't think about my business. I just focus on what do my customers need from me at that moment. So these are challenging times that we're in, but just shift your focus. What if this is actually the best thing that's happened to your business? What if this opens doors to new connections and new ways of being? What if this crisis causes us to work from home more and connect with our families and work less and be in nature more? And what if this actually helps the environment? So there's a lot of good that's going to come out of this. And just remember, you get what you focus on. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thanks so much.